Would you please welcome the absolute master, Ken Loach, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks very much. I can't live up to that, but anyway, we'll do our best.
Sorry about that. I sometimes get carried away. Ken, absolute pleasure to have you here. We're in a copy of The Rabbit's Foot as well, so if you have read that already, we'll try and do something a bit different, in case you've read that before. But when Charles Finch said we're going to do the power of film for this issue, my first suggestion was that we have to speak to Ken Loach, because his films have the power to force us to think, to change, to act. They have the power to force us to go to the cinema as well. Cinema exerts this amazing power, Ken. When you set out to make a film, do you have a goal to sort of say, well, I want it to have an effect on someone? And what are those effects that you want?
I think it's very difficult. I think, the first thing is to find the story that, if you simply tell the story, it will shed a light on a particular issue or on a circumstance, on characters, on a conflict, or whatever it is you want to talk about. Simply telling the story will shine that light and clarify a situation we have a sense of, but don't really see clearly. So I think that's the first thing, is to, film is always about light. Physically shedding light on a celluloid with chemicals, but also to enlighten and to illuminate the subject, as well as the celluloid. So that's the first thing. And then you start thinking, I don't know how to do this. I really don't know how to do this one. I don't know how to find the people. I don't know how to... I've always worked with the writers, so the content is the writers and the characters and the narrative and the story and how it develops. But when you're thinking about it, think, I just don't know how to do this. I don't know how I can find somebody who will... I know we're going to talk about Daniel Blake, but I don't know how I'll find someone who will actually convince an audience that they are in that situation. So you look, and I think gradually, you have to relearn the lessons you think you've learned before, and gradually find your way through, But it is you kind of stumble along saying, well, maybe this, maybe that,
And still, you're a veteran filmmaker, if I may say. You still almost start with that same trepidation. There's no, I know what to do. There's no machinery that clicks in.
No, it is, you start with fear. Fear, anxiety, fear, and the fear develops because you always meet wonderful people when you're making a film. It's an adventure, and it's an exploration. The film is the exploration. And you meet amazing people. And then the fear is, I'm not going to do justice to this because these people are in such a plight, or they're so brave, or they desperately need their story to be told, or they have a courage, they have they just have a quality, and you think, I'm not going to be able to present them in the way they need to be and deserve to be. So there's always those fears, and every day of the shoot we shoot. The general rule is to prepare slowly because preparing is cheap. Shoot quickly because then you develop a momentum and everything fires and people have sort of creative energy, and then you cut slowly. Partly because you're knackered and you need a simple job for a few months. It's good in the winter, you get a decent coffee, and so all that's good. But the shooting has got to be quick, and within the day, the schedules are tight. When we do it in 6 weeks, the schedules are tight. You've only got 1 day for a sequence. By the end of that day, come hell or high water, you've got to have it in the can. And they might be the deepest emotions that person's ever experienced. And you've got to get it in somehow. And so that's the fear. Every morning you wake up and think, like, is it going to work today? You know, and what must I not say? And what must I say? And what order can we do the shots
You
in?
mean to get the reaction that you want, to get the shot that you want?
Yes.
As a director, what do I have to do to do that?
Yes,
And
exactly.
what that can involve preparing the actor, surprising the actor.
Yes.
I know you do that quite a bit, don't you? You don't show them necessarily all the parts.
No. And we shoot in sequence so that it unfolds, you know, and the people in the film experience it day by day. I mean, obviously you have to make the odd shuffle around, but by and large they experience the story. They don't know how it's going to end. They should know everything about themselves, so they wouldn't do anything out of character, but they kind of live it as far as one can, you know, without being pretentious about it. They kind of live it day to day. And the thing is, if you do that, what we do today is it's in their guts when we do it tomorrow, next scene. And you don't have to rationalise. You don't have to say, how would you feel if if you're out of sequence? You go, how would you feel, you know, if your father dropped dead in front of you or whatever? I mean, how would you feel? I said, God knows, I don't know. But if you've played the scene, if you've lived it, you don't need to have that conversation.
Before, you've still got it. Yeah.
It's just in your guts, you know. And best not to articulate it, because the moment you articulate it, you limit it. Because you've got to find words to describe a feeling. Well, it's just a feeling. Live off the feeling. So that's why we shoot in order.
Is that something you developed? You just found that that's the best way for you to get the best out of your performance? Because if you do we know big films, they shoot all their bits in one location, and then, it's very unusual, I think, for people to come do that.
It just seems the common sense way to do it. I mean, it's much better for the people in the film, because there's no artificial conversations, and it's much easier for people doing continuity, because the continuity we just did it the day before. And there's a freedom about it, because particularly if it's an emotional scene, the person doesn't know quite what emotion they're going to experience, and they imagine doing it, and it's not actually what they do in real life, you know. And so you can then adapt what you do the next day. I mean, it seems so obvious, really, and so much simpler, you know, so much simpler, and it doesn't add a lot of money, and it doesn't add a lot of time. It's actually quicker. And it's simpler. It's just simple.
I was going to show some clips, but actually I'd quite like to show I, Daniel Blake first, if that's possible, because it seems to be we're talking about a day that you shot, a scene that I think you must have shot, and we'll talk about how you constructed it, but it's a scene that has such impact. It had impact when I first saw it. I was absolutely shocked. I'd never seen a scene like it. It continues to have impact that's political and social and cinematic all the way. And so I'd love to go back to that day when out of that will come all of these ripples. So it's an extraordinary scene, I think, in recent British cinema. Probably one of the most impactful films of the century in British cinema. It's from against Palme d'Or winner I, Daniel Blake.
Pasta here as well. I'll get your pasta. Hey, pet, are you all right? What are you doing? Come and sit down. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Come and sit down. It's all right. It's all right. You're okay. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Do you want a drink?
I'm really sorry.
What's the matter?
It's okay, darling.
I'll get you a drink.
Mum, what's going on?
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm just really hungry.
Okay.
Look.
No. It's okay. It's okay. There's no harm done.
I'll go down. I feel like I'm going under.
Look, you get through this, darling. You get through this. Kate, listen to me. This isn't your fault. You've done amazing. Dumped up here on your own with 2 kids. You've done nothing to be ashamed of.
You're okay. Come on, wait.
I find it very affecting every time I see it, Ken, I must say. The amazing Hayley Squires and Dave Johns there. She's in a food bank. I'd never seen a food bank on screen before. I'd heard people talk about food banks and maybe willfully sort of ignored them. I'd never seen them put on the big screen. Even that, as an act of shooting in a food bank, is an extraordinary thing to do.
Well, I mean, the film came about just in a way, you know, for the reasons you say, is that the horror, and it is a horror, and it is increasing, that hundreds of thousands of people, not around here probably, will not eat unless you put a can in a collecting box in the supermarket. And when we were doing this, there was 500,000 children. 500,000 children don't eat without charity food. And we know it's getting worse. It's getting worse. It's increasing many times. And that should be a level of shame to this country. So, anyway, but Paul and I talked about it, and Paul wrote a wonderful script. And there was this scene where Hayley's a single parent with 2 kids, is encouraged by a local authority to move north where the houses are cheaper and get this family off their books, as it were. And so she moves to the northeast, where she and Dave, who plays Daniel Blake, he's a carpenter who's got a heart problem. He can't work any longer, and he's about to retire anyway. But he still has to look for work 35 hours a week, even though he's told he's too ill to work. So they strike up a friendship. Hayley's character has no money. She's sanctioned because she was late for clocking in one day at the job centre. She got no money. She feeds the kids, and she doesn't eat herself. And after a few days, she goes to Dave takes her to a food bank, and you see the queue. And what really touched us, and I've said this before, the women. I mean, it was a real food bank. Obviously, not functioning as a food bank the day we shot, but it was a real food bank. The people helping in the food bank were the people who helped, or from another food bank, a woman came to help. And so in a way, it's partly a documentary about them and how they worked and how they treated people. And what really got to me on the day was the woman who was helping Hayley. Works in food banks, and she said, can I help you with your shopping? To rescue someone's dignity like that, just amazing.
It was unscripted. That was just
yeah,
her,
she just said it.
Her way of...
Yeah. But to get that scene with Hayley, obviously no one else knew she was going to... I mean, she walks around the bank and they fill up her bag, and then in the script she goes to where the food tins are. She separates herself from the woman helping her, goes to a food can, pulls the lid off and tries to eat some beans because she loses control. She's so hungry, and that was based on a story that had happened in Glasgow. And I went with Paul to the food bank where it happened, and I heard the story myself of a woman who had done precisely that. So I thought, well, how are we going to do this? Because Hayley knew and prepared herself for it, and didn't, she just prepared herself for that. Dave didn't know, the people in the food bank didn't know. We had to arrange for her 2 kids to be what the people in the food bank did anyway. They had a little place where they served fruit juice and tea and that. at one end, and a woman helper took the two kids there while Hayley went round to get served, and so they were at the other end, and I had to arrange it so that nobody knew what was going to happen, but I had to get them into a situation where you could take the right shots, because there's no point in it happening somewhere in a corner, and the people perform brilliantly, but the shots don't work. So again, a parallel I've used before is that it's a bit like cutting a trench for water to run downhill. You know, you want to develop, you want people to work, be in a certain place, not hiding each other, make a good frame, come in the right place, but you can't tell them. Or you can tell one person, but no one else. So it's the equivalent of cutting a channel downhill and then pouring water. And the water will run down the channel, even though you haven't told it to. And so there was a table. We had a table between, a long trestle table between the two. We had two cameras, trestle table. The shelves going at 90 degrees away from the table. And then Hayley knew what she would do. I said to her, just let the woman carry on. So Hayley did that. And then there was an obvious chair on the other side of this trestle table from the cameras, so that was the obvious place for her to go. And mercifully, in the first take, it was only one take, the woman who was helping her brought it, once she saw what was happening, she brought her to that chair. And because there was a table, no one could block the shot. And if she was, and the chair was facing, so it was facing along the line, so she would sit, and we could get a shot of her that way, with her head going, you know, table, Hayley, people caring for her. So they didn't block each other's shot. I mean, she played it. She's dead true. You know, all the great actors are just spot on. They're just dead true. They give it you straight in the eyes. You know, there's no acting in inverted commas. And the woman was the woman. And Dave was very concerned. I said to her, she's a bit frail today. Don't know quite how she'll respond. So he was really prepared for something to happen, but didn't know what. And in the queue outside, she hadn't been plainly not well, so he was saying to her, "Are you okay?" And so they did, and then I think I'd prepared the woman with the two kids to say, look, if anything happens, it may not, just tell the kids to go and see their mum. So we just did it on that basis, really.
And one take.
Yeah, we did a second take, but the first take is the one.
Need it, no. I mean, the performance is extraordinary. I don't know if we call it naturalism. Just hearing you sort of set it up, it's naturalism with naturalism plus. I think we call it now.
I'm not sure it needs an ism, really.
No,
it's only a critic who would think of an ism. I mean, they just do it, you know. they just do it. And just experience it and just tell the truth, you know.
What, as we're seeing it now, and that impact, as you say, it's got stories in the news today about starving more children going hungry in school meals, etc. Do you feel when you do seem like that, you're impelled to tell truth, but do you know you're holding it up to a certain sort of faction of society? That David in Cannes, for example, which it's sort of strange, you know, like doing it in Mayfair. It's sort of a strange place to shock them with.
Well, I mean, you'll know, I mean, because you've been more than me, I'm sure. But Cannes is a mixture. It is the yachts and all the smart people on the Croisette, but it's also people who work in films. It's also people just staying in the cheapest hotels they can get because they like cinema, or just trying to get their own work off the ground. So it is a mixture. They've all, touched wood, you know, they've been okay to us. But I mean, also the audience you want is anyone with an open mind, you know, and anyone who who doesn't have a fixed view and is prepared to just have an open mind and meet the people in the film and live their lives with them and share their choices and, weep with them, be angry with them,
But when this film went on to win the Palme d'Or that year, which I thought was a tremendous achievement, the reaction, often I get called, as a critic, one gets called up. Can you talk on the radio about this? I don't remember one that I was more in demand to talk about than I, Daniel Blake, from Radio Newcastle to BBC Newcastle, all of them. They just wanted to hear about this film. You sort of put an element of Britain on the map. Again, was it just a certain moment, do you think, that needed to be drawing attention to this starvation that was happening, this poverty?
It wasn't a moment. I mean, it's a continuous thread. It's a continuous thread since the 80s, with the destruction of what we call the welfare state. What we call the 1945 settlement, with the establishment of the health service, public transport that was owned by the public, gas and electricity that we owned, water that we owned and is now polluted, the post office that we owned, and now they're trying to turn the postal workers into the gig economy workers, like the Amazon delivery people. I mean, it's a continuous struggle as the free marketeers set out to destroy what was created, and the human cost and the inefficiency and the destruction of the environment and the sense of society fragmenting is finally coming home to roost. And it started in 79, when Thatcher won, continued in 84-85 when she trashed the miners, planned their defeat with the connivance of the state, and you have to say Kinnock and Hattersley and the rest of that miserable bunch, with them, and the destruction of those communities. And we've just been filming in those communities, actually, and they stand, back in the day, I mean, we did a little documentary in 84-85, and the solidarity, the mutual support, the friendship, the good neighbourliness, just living alongside people where you helped each other when you're in trouble. Living the most, obviously small communities, they have their limitations. I mean, the kids want to move away and they can be narrow-minded, sure. But the essence of the way they lived, of mutual support, helping each other, solidarity, those communities now were destroyed. And she knew she would destroy it. And she did. And you see the wreckage now. So if only it were one moment, you could build for a victory, but I'm afraid it ain't.
Was there a moment where you decided, I'm going to keep charting this? Because it's a free world, it's a story. You've told elements of those that you've talked about. You've told in various stories, from the Navigators to Riff Raff to It's a Free World. Is it something Britain keeps throwing you something and you respond to it? Or did you set out to sort of say, well, I'm going to document this in my various ways?
No, it's you live film by film, really, and what comes up and the stories that demand to be told. And I suppose, and I mean, I have to say we, because it's always been Paul Laverty for the last nearly 30 years, and Rebecca O'Brien, the producer, without whom there would be no films. So it's been a little gang, really, and I suppose we try to tell the stories that you feel, well, you've no choice, you've got to do it. It's a story that you have to tell, because it's part of our who we are, isn't it? It's part of how we live, and I think cinema is such a wonderful medium for it, and I think what's always sad is that cinema's been it's been dominated by the idea of, it's about film stars, it's about Americans, it's about great wealth, it's about, big explosions or crazy things happening, or, the stars this and the stars that, and it's sort of, and that is worth so much more. I mean, it has all the elements of drama, conflict, narrative, character, the interaction, the stuff of drama. It has music. It has fine art. We know with the images. It has how do we look at light. You know, the aesthetic issues that people who draw drawings or etchings or paintings or whatever confront also. It has all that when you construct a frame. And it can do so much, you know, and our experience of it is so limited. I mean, it's like we have prose and you walk, all you have is a bunch of airport novels. And it's a pity. Mm-hmm. It's worth more, you know.
When you realised you were going to tell stories through the medium of cinema, or I suppose Kathy Come Home and Up the Junction were television to start with, did you know that was you would do it that way rather than the explosions or I don't know, genre films, horrors, westerns, whatever explosions? Do you watch those films as well, or?
I don't really. I used to, but life's too short, isn't it? Really, it's too short. I mean, there's so many things that intrude all the time, really, and things to get involved in, and people to meet, and so I don't watch them as much as I used to. And I mean, obviously there are great films from across the world, but the availability of world cinema or European cinema, to which I guess, you know, we feel a particular affinity, you know, particularly the films from Eastern Europe or some of the early Italian films.
But they were the ones that you queued round the block for.
Yes, yeah.
Let's romanticise that the people were queuing around the block to see these films, but I think they were really. I mean, we hear stories about, you know, where will you be seeing these? What cinema?
I saw some at university. I saw some in the 60s at the old Academy Cinema in Oxford Street, now Marks and Spencer's, I believe. But that was a great cinema. That was my home.
And what we're talking about, the Italian neo-realists?
Yes, and the East European films, Hungarian films, Czech films, Polish films, Vida and people. And they seem to have a kind of weight and authority. I don't mean weight in a boring way. I mean just substance, and the seriousness and the humour, you know, and a way of using the camera, and a way of observing light, and just a kind of a lightly worn gravitas, if there can be such a thing.
But they move you, these films. You know, you come out changed from the experience.
Yes, and I can remember them very well.
Yeah. I also think we talked about some of those political things, but I think you're also, one of your great gifts is childhood. You've made some great films about young people. I think about The Angels Share. I think about Sweet 16 with Martin Compston and his delivery bike, and of course the one that I talked about at the start, Kes, which still is probably, you know, so many boys' favourite film. People still dream about that film. We're going to show a clip of it.
Okay.
It's one of my favourite clips.
Okay. Which bit is it?
You're going to see.
Okay.
And then you can tell us how you made it.
Okay.
But it is one of British cinema's high points. I think.
Oh right.
Another one. Yeah.
Come on, Greg! Ball, go on, boy! Casper! Casper! What do you think you are, lad? An idiot!
All he needs now is a banana.
Get down! I'll make you red hot in a minute.
Thank you. And for my next streak.
I'll show you a trick. Get back in that goal and the rest of you on this field.
1,000 PE lessons flooding back. You know, it's great. I just, you know, I spend most of my weekends watching my children sort of on luckily they're slightly more organised than that, going to the football tonight. With Brian Glover, the late Brian Glover, fantastic there. And Billy Casper, played by David Bradley, in goal there. You're still friendly with
Yes.
David Brown.
Billy Casper's. Well, he was 14 in 1968. So what is it? Is it'll be 65, I think now. So Billy Casper's 65, 66, and. Yes, I mean, it's a great scene in Barry Hines' book. I mean, it's a wonderful book, A Kestrel for a Knave. And it's very funny. I mean, Barry had a great ear for South Yorkshire dialect, for the these and thous, and it's a language for comedy. It really is. I mean, just listening to the language makes you smile. And he wrote in, and Barry played football I think he got as far as Barnsley Reserves, really, which is some achievement at the time. He was a PE teacher, he didn't teach English, and then started to write. And we did, all the kids came from the one school. It was a 2-form entry, comprehensive school in Barnsley, and all the kids came from there, apart from about a couple from the school the next school. And Brian Glover taught English at another school nearby. So everything was very, that community. Lovely, hilarious man. And that was the first thing he did. He was a wrestler. He taught English during the day and then wrestled and then came back to sing All Things Bright and Beautiful in the morning with a black eye. And so, and it's written. And we set up some things. Brian improvised some of it. So again, I mean, the kids didn't know basically what was going to happen. I mean, there was we set up a pattern to it, to what the different things that would happen. Then something else would happen that we hadn't planned, and then I'd add one or two bits as we went along. One of the lads got sent off and sent a volley of abuse back and things like that. So there's a mixture of pre-planned and improvisation. Really,
it shows your, I think, underappreciated gift for comedy. I think your films are often quite funny, and that comes in the camaraderie and the banter of the team, really. Their football team here, or their Sweet 16 team, or the navigators as they go about the business, or Ricky Tomlinson in Riff Raff. There's a lot of that in your work. Is that important to you? Is that what you do when you've got this cast together? You create that.
Well, it's. I mean. I think it's part of daily life. I mean, it's not something we'll put in some humour here. I mean, it is part of how we live, isn't it? And so it's absolutely implicit in every situation, and the way that it's expressed itself, and particularly people at work and people will have nicknames. There'll be one who's always in trouble at home. There'll be one who's always late. There'll be one who's, either chasing the lads or chasing the girls, whatever. And so it's implicit. And everyone the writers I've worked with, they've always written some lines in that make you smile. And then I've found quite early on that comics are great actors. If you can hold an audience and get laughs, you can do the sad stuff. Absolutely, but the sense of comic timing, just being innately funny, it counts for a lot, because then people do smile, and it's part of who they are.
So Dave Johns is a stand-up comedian. Ricky Tomlinson was a comedian. You've had quite a few that you've.
Yeah, I mean, most films we've worked with comics in. And they also, I mean, I did a lot in Liverpool in the early days, and I mean, they're all comics, and you'd start. They were great for nicknames. I was called Dick Turpin on one film because I said, "What's all this?" I kept saying, "Where's Dick Turpin?" I said, "What's all this Dick Turpin stuff?" He said, "Well, the thing is, you're always poking your head into the bus, saying, 'Sorry, lads, there's been a hold-up.' And here's Dick Turpin again." So there's, they just make you smile, really.
I'm going to call you that forever. now. I mentioned childhood because you do capture that childhood. What is it? I mean, cinema is very, very good on childhood. Some of those films that you mentioned, the Czech films, the Polish films, I think of films like Kolya, they are superb at getting. I know it's performances from children, but also us to empathise with children. It taps into something in cinema's power to take us back to, I suppose, a time when we were younger. How do you do that as a creator and as a director?
Well, you just see lots of kids and try out. I mean, we just try little improvisations, so that they, and then you see who reacts easily, who draws you in that you want to watch, who makes you smile, who makes you sad, who can touch you, and then if they can do that, then you keep working in roughly the same way. And depending on the age of the child, I mean, if they're very young, then you just suggest a line on the day. I found if kids go away and learn something, they say to their parents over and over again, and you've lost it. So there has to be an element of spontaneity and trust. And that's very important. That's very important for everybody involved. Because you're not only kids, but you're asking people to risk making fools of themselves, just to be there and be prepared to respond. So trust is very important, and knowing that they won't be betrayed. They won't be betrayed. That you won't get something that they would not want to feel embarrassed by. And that's very important. And the warmth, support of friendship around what you're doing is very important on the day, so that and people always mess up. I mean, there's always mistakes. And so you've got to let people know it doesn't matter if they make a mistake. It doesn't matter. It's just a bit of film gone through the camera, and they'll see me make more mistakes than anybody. And so it's fine, and everybody's easy about it. And if they get into a real knot, you just go to one side just very quietly and try something else for a change, and then come back to it. And so
we heard this morning from Matthew Modine working with Kubrick and Alan Parker. I mean, different filmmakers to you, obviously, but they were working here in this country the same time you've been. These were not methods that we heard that they used. Alan Parker was screaming at Matthew Modine. Kubrick was going take after take till the acting became freer. It seems yours is clearly a different approach.
I can't understand that. I can't understand it because just think, everyone just think, how do you do your best? When you're confident, when you know that you can try anything and it's fine. You know that you won't be made a fool of, you won't be held up in front of anybody. It's sort of confidence and a creative energy. And then, anybody can do anything, we could do it now. I mean, because nobody's going to take the piss, or no one's going to hold you up, and no one's going to shame you. And then you're confident. And particularly for people who've never done it before, and even for people who have. You'll let go, you'll be vulnerable. And if an actor isn't vulnerable, then you've lost it. You've lost something. So I don't get that. I've never understood this idea that the director is some imperious person who, as you say, shouts at people, or the von Stroheim guy walking in jackboots around. I mean,
big megaphone.
I can't do anything worse. And the thing is, as director, you will have more cock-ups than anybody else. So you will get things wrong. So, it only needs someone to say, well, he's not very good himself, is he? And you're lost, And people won't work for you if you're like that. Not with joy, and not with fun, and the fact you can just have a laugh about something. And it's really critical that. And everyone in the crew, you pick them not only because they're good at their job, but because they're nice people. And generous people, and you need that sense of generosity. It's nice, but it's a professional necessity, because if you don't have it, people retreat.
You work with, you know, as I said, your crew and the cast, so, and we think of Ken Loach films, we don't think of stars. You talked about stars, but actually, if you look at the list of films, you worked with some tremendous actors who went on to either be stars. Robert Carlyle, Martin Compston. We just talked. Hayley Squires is having a fantastic career, and you know, if you go back, there's Cillian Murphy, for example, who's a huge star. Do you ask them to do anything? Do you get them before they go on to big careers? But when they do go on to big careers, it seems to me, Ken, they don't. They sort of carry something of the approach or the humility or the dignity that they brought from your films with them.
Well, no, I mean, I think the golden rule is you treat everyone the same. And that's a huge relief, I've found. I mean, we worked with Frances McDormand on a film called Hidden Agenda. And she was already well known, and I guess people would say star. When I met her, I said, look, you know, it's a small film. I mean, there are no stand-ins, and nobody will get you a cup of tea, and they won't have a trailer, and you'll just be queue up for your food like in everyone else. And she said, fine. And after a bit, she said, this is such a relief, because I'm not, there's no moment when I emerge from the trailer and I have to be brilliant. You know, just been sitting around, and obviously if you need somewhere quiet to sit to get ready for a scene, of course we, you know, that's
you got
we
a
always
chair.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, you got no, but I mean that's respected. You know, yes, you need somewhere quiet, and so we'll find somewhere quiet. But it's not like it takes away that burden of responsibility of being the one. You know, and what a relief just to be alongside one of the Sparks and talking about something else, and it's just a relief. And Cillian was well known, and he's from Cork, Cork City in the south of Ireland, and we were seeing people in a space, I forget what it was, community hall or theatre, and Cillian. I mean, obviously we asked him if he'd come along, and he came along. There were a few people, we were running a bit late, a few people waiting. Cillian just sat there, came in, I'm Cillian, no messing, no, where's, you know, are you expecting me kind of thing. He's just a person, and a lovely person, and brilliant, as we know. And he just chipped in, and he did a little improvisation with whoever was next. See you. Off he went. I mean, I had huge respect for him because of that. And of course, he carried that all the way through. And so, for the other lads in the film, I mean, some of whom were farmhands, some were apprentices, and it's about a militia, one of the militia flying columns, they were called, that fought the Brits in 1920-21.
This is The Wind That Shakes the Barley.
Yeah.
That won Ken another Palme d'Or.
Yeah, and Cillian, he was just one of them. And of course that made the difference. You know, it gave them the courage just to do it. You know, and what a release for him, just to be one of them. So it worked for everybody, but it only works. It works if the people who are in that position in the industry, who have the just the generosity, just to chip in, really.
Shall we have a look at them all chipping in together in The Wind That Shakes the Barley?
Oh right, you got a clip of that?
Yeah.
Oh right, that was a bit of luck.
Segue.
Yeah.
What's your name?
I'm a member of the Irish Republican Army, and I demand to be treated as a political prisoner.
No, you're not. You're a murdering gangster who shoots young men in the back.
No, you're wrong. I'm a Democrat. In the last election, Sinn Féin won 73 seats out of a possible 105. Our mandate for an Irish Republic completely separate from Great Britain. A democratic decision.
Listen, that is not my responsibility. I'm just a soldier sent by my government.
Your government which suppresses our parliament, which bans our paper. Your presence here is a crime, a foreign occupation. You tell me what I'm supposed to do as a Democrat. Turn the other cheek for another 700 years.
That is not my responsibility.
Get out of my country.
What is your name?
Get out of my country.
Not a bob cutter. Show me your hands. Show me your fucking hands.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Pull my fingernails off, is that it? You fucking well expect.
These men fought to the stone, up to their necks in vomit, in filthy trenches, while their friends got blown apart in front of their eyes. Sort him out!
There's a little story I must tell you. We got dogs abuse after that film. You know, it was called An Enemy of My Country and all this. And there was one columnist. He was writing the Telegraph for the Times, and he said he really attacked the film. And he said the one thing, you know, they showed the British Army in a disgraceful light, and the one thing that, of course, the film didn't show is Republicans always rejected the democratic route. He forgot the decision taken that Killian refers to in that in 1919, I think it was, the Dáil for all Ireland voted democratically, overwhelmingly, for an independent, united Ireland. The man who wrote that review, who said the Republicans always rejected democracy, was none other than Michael Gove, who went on to be the Minister of Education. So maybe he should have read the books before he made the comment.
Might have redacted them, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. An enemy of
people. It was also called a worse propagandist than Leni Riefenstahl, Hitler's propagandist. And a man called Simon Heffer, you may have heard of, who writes for the Telegraph, wrote a piece, you know, attacking the film, and he said, I haven't seen the film. He said, I don't want to see the film because I don't need to read Mein Kampf to know what a louse Hitler was. That's Simon Heffer.
Are you an enemy of your country?
I'm an enemy of them. Well, no, obviously not. I mean, it's. I think when you look at the record of the British ruling class, it is not only vicious and despicable and cruel and corrupting, but it's also the most urbane, the most sophisticated, the most skillful ruling class in the world, I think. Well, certainly I can't think of a more skillful one. You know, to own the BBC and parade its independence when we can think of so many key subjects in which its position is so partial and so blatantly one-sided that it makes the claim for independence laughable. And yet, people believe it. And when it was under threat just recently, there was a whole column. I was asked to do a piece for The Observer, and it was a sheet after sheet of the great and the good in our business, in the arts, in the glitterati and the literati, all saying, oh, we must preserve the independence of the BBC. I mean, can't they read? Can't they listen? Can't they look at what's going on in the world and see what side the BBC is on? Extraordinary. So you have to admire grudgingly admire the urbanity and sophistication and ability of the British ruling class to preserve the hypocrisy and disguise it so well.
Ladies and gentlemen, the power of film, Ken Loach.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you.